When you're thinking and planning, I want you to think of as coding. When you really are designing this, that's the thinking part, but the planning part, honestly, I think of coding. The interesting thing about the two, and we've discussed this in some detail already, is that when we have to evaluate a universal, we would have to think of going through, frankly, a loop, but we would have to iterate through the whole thing just to make sure that, frankly, it turns out to be true. Because again, we got to go through the whole thing in order to be true. So as soon as we hit a step where we hit a false, then we terminate the loop, because that's it. Because remember, with a universal, all of those items that we're passing in have to pass the test. Whereas the loop is going to be different for, well, frankly, for the existential. We're just looking for one instance of our variable to be true in its overall condition and propositional function. So this time, we're going to be going through until it hits a true, and then it's going to go ahead and... Now, what happens if the loop goes through without finding a true? Then it will return a false. But so it still went through the whole thing just to find that one example to make it true. So that's why both of these are going to be. But notice both of them will end up terminating. You're hoping early, but well, you're hoping this one terminates early. You're not hoping this one terminates early, so in order to be true. So when you're talking about your overall propositional statement, again, the existential is going to be easier for us to think about, because all we need is one value in order for it to be true, then the whole thing is true. But this might be a little bit more interesting, because we've got to think of all possible values, especially when it comes to our universe, is positive integers in this case. Well, for this one, it's just 1 is not less than 2, so there's where a false is. So again, we only needed 1 here to make it true. Here we need all of them to be true in order to come out true as well.